There's one critical ingredient in your puppy or kitten's diet that will increase brain power and vision, and your pet food may only have the bare minimum. I'm going to go over what that ingredient is, what it does in the growing brain, and why timing is so critical. I'll show you what to look for on a pet food label and answer the question, does my pet food have enough? And I'll also tell you what to do if it doesn't. Hi, I'm Dr. April. I'm a vet and I like to dive down research rabbit holes so you don't have to. By the way, if you're interested in learning about other science-backed supplements, I've put together a free resource guide for pet parents. Quick start guide to pet supplements that every pet owner should know, and it covers the top pet problems. The link is in the description below. The ingredient I'm talking about is DHA, a component of fish oil, also known as omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s are polyunsaturated fatty acids that have a chemical structure that make them bendy and kinky. This ability to be flexible is at the heart of why they are so important for pets and for people too. They actually have an interesting backstory. The two most valuable omega-3s, EPA and DHA, are actually made by marine algae. They live in the cold parts of the ocean. They created an adaptation so that their cells didn't become stiff and hard in the cold water. This adaptation was EPA and DHA. Then they're eaten by animals like krill, which are also eaten by other animals like cold water fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies. The fish oil is eaten by pets and people, and it is then incorporated into cell membranes. Because the omega-3s have such a bendy structure, when they're incorporated into the cells are very flexible and can function optimally. Even among all of the flexible fatty acids, DHA stands out as being especially bendy. This means it's just about the perfect component to be put into a brain cell. And in fact, the lipids in the brain are about 40% DHA. Think of it like a gymnast versus a robot. A gymnast can bend, twist, and adapt to different positions. They're flexible and responsive. A robot, on the other hand, can only move in certain limited ways. Brain cells with DHA in the membranes are like those gymnasts. They can form connections more easily, adapt to new information, and respond to changes quickly. Brain cells without DHA are more like the robots, stiff and inflexible. There's actually a long list of things that DHA can do in the growing brain, but to simplify, it allows brain cells to connect more easily during growth. It speeds up messages. It stimulates brain cells to grow more branches, triggers growth factors that can help the brain cells thrive. The retina is chock full of DHA too, because it's like a little layer of the brain inside of the eye. DHA during growth improves vision development, and this in turn sends more visual information to the brain, increasing the cognitive growth of the growing brain. The end result of having lots of DHA in the growing brain is faster learning, better problem solving, better vision, and a bigger brain. All in all, better trainability for a pet. Let's look at why the timing is critical. We have a limited time to create an optimal environment for that growing, developing brain. Puppies are born with 10% of their adult brain mass. Kittens, 25%. The most rapid growth of the brain is during the first 3 months of life for a puppy and 7 weeks for a kitten. The most critical window of time for puppy brain development is from pregnancy in the mother all the way up to about 6 months of life. In kittens, the critical window is from pregnancy in the mother to 4 months of age. DHA is still beneficial during the slower phase of growth, up to 1 year of age in puppies and 7 months in kittens. After a year old, the impact of DHA on the brain structure is much less because many of the neural connections have already been made. And what about the mother when she's pregnant or nursing? Huge impact on brain development and vision development of the puppies and kittens. Important information to share with breeders. So how do we know all this stuff? There are actually a few studies that took puppies, fed them different diets with different levels of DHA, and measured their brain function, their memories, their problem solving. They fed them the bare minimum of DHA, moderate levels, and higher levels, which was 4 times the minimum amount. They gave them all intelligence tests and then fed them the diet and measured again after a few weeks or months on that special diet. They then compared how the groups did compared to each other and to their earlier performance on the test. For example, one test is the radial arm maze test. Central platform, 8 arms radiating out. There's a treat at the end of one of those arms. The puppies have to problem solve to go and find that treat. They did that initial test and then retested 9 weeks later. They found that the puppies on the high levels of DHA had 33% less errors compared to the low DHA puppies. Another study showed 25% faster completion of a maze test. And another study showed almost double the success in puppies learning to associate different shapes with treats. Most of the studies that we have on this increased trainability with DHA is in puppies because, well, have you ever tried to get your cat to go down a maze to find a treat and train them? Maybe you have, let me know. These studies showed that the dose matters too, not just the timing of when DHA is given. The big gains in brains came with giving more DHA than just the minimum. So now the big question, does your puppy or kitten food have the right amount for optimal brain development? Let's look at how to figure this out. And that starts with looking at the dreaded pet food label. Trying to figure out what's in pet food is like trying to find buried treasure with a treasure map, missing pieces and written in ancient Greek. Pet food nutrient profile requirements come from AAFCO, but they only list requirements for combined EPA and DHA, which is 0.05% minimum for puppies, and for kittens, 0.012%. There is no requirement to list DHA levels on the label, and often you will see combined omega-3s listed and not specifically the level of DHA. It's actually not required at all to list anything for kitten foods. None of the kitten foods I looked at actually had DHA listed in the guaranteed analysis, though many of them do contain fish oil. So here's an insider tip for you. Many pet foods list flaxseed as a source of omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, which is great, right? Because we know that flax is a superfood. What they don't tell you is that pets can't use plants as a source for the omega-3 fatty acids EPA and DHA. Plants contain a different omega-3 fatty acid that really isn't very useful at all. The body has to convert it into the more useful EPA and DHA. Unfortunately, in pets, this doesn't happen very well. Dogs can convert at about a 5% efficiency. Cats can't do it at all. So what we need to see on the label is fish oil, krill oil, or marine algae oil as our source of DHA. Another insider tip, pet food labels show you the guaranteed analysis. This is essentially a guarantee of maximums and minimums for those ingredients. It is not an actual number of what is in the pet food. They're just guaranteeing that the amount of that ingredient is above a certain amount for a minimum. Many times the only way to know the actual amount is to contact the manufacturer. For levels of DHA, we can assume that the actual levels are quite close to that guaranteed analysis minimum because it's an expensive ingredient. Pet foods will not willingly go too much above this minimum because it's going to cost them more money. The minimum requirement for puppies for combined EPA and DHA, 0.05%, and kittens, 0.012%. Unfortunately, this is not based on actual research. This is taken from the amount that's in canine milk and given an arbitrary multiplying factor. But research suggests that the optimal amount for good brain development is 0.1 to 0.2%, which is 2 to 4 times higher than the minimum amount that AAFCO states should be in the pet food. According to veterinary nutritionists and pet food industry analysts, many pet foods do contain the minimum that is required for DHA content. I did look at some popular examples and I was pleasantly surprised at what I found in there. This is not an exhaustive list because it actually does take quite a lot of time to analyze these diets, so I only did a few. For dry puppy food, the levels range from 0.02% for Hill's Science Diet Puppy, small bites, and the Origin puppy food. I found levels of 0.1% in Iams Puppy, Purina Puppy Chow, and Royal Canin Puppy. Old Roy Puppy from Walmart contains a minimum at 0.05%. The one canned puppy food that I looked at also contained 0.05% DHA, even though salmon was the 5th ingredient. And keep in mind, when trying to compare levels in canned food versus dry food, an additional calculation must be made to account for the moisture. So with all this vague and uncertain information from pet food labels, can we answer the question, does your pet have the right levels for optimal brain and vision development? Well, I think we can safely say that they all meet the minimum requirements. But we can also say that the minimum is not optimal. The study showing the most benefit had levels of 0.1 to 0.2%. That is 2 to 4 times higher than the minimum requirements. But we can definitely find pet food in this area that has the additional amount above minimum. What about more? Do we get more impact for levels higher than that seen in the studies? I think it's likely, but we don't have those studies to prove it. Many of the existing studies were sponsored by pet food companies. I don't think there's an incentive there to do further studies that show that even better effects would be seen with more of a very expensive ingredient. But it's certainly possible that we will see studies about this in the future. I will keep an eye out and let you know. So what if your pet's food doesn't reach that optimal level? You have options. Fish oil or marine algae oil supplements are widely available, but they do vary in the amount of the DHA component. And there are ones that are specifically formulated for pets. I was not able to find any that have high DHA levels as supplements for pets. Check in with your vet to discuss specific dosing instructions and to discuss diet. There's some important tips about supplementing with fish oil. Quality and freshness, very important. Fish oil can be contaminated with heavy metals from the ocean, and a rancid oil will actually do more harm than good. Look for supplements with a third-party testing for quality. Keep them in the fridge in a dark bottle. That helps to keep them from going rancid. Second option, add some fish to the diet. Salmon, anchovies, and mackerel are the fish with the highest DHA levels compared to EPA. If you're adding anything new into a diet, start with a small amount, gradually increase. Again, talk to your vet about specific amounts. There are resources to tell you how much EPA and DHA is in each amount of fish per weight. So that can help to tell you how much you might need to feed your puppy or kitten. What about the question of adding extra DHA, even if your pet food is in that 0.1 to 0.2% optimal range? Every pet owner and their vet will need to look at the benefits versus the risks. We don't have the hard science to tell us that above those levels, we're definitely going to get a benefit, especially if we're getting good quality products and protecting them from going rancid by keeping them in the fridge. But we do know the risks are minimal at typical doses with quality products and fresh. The benefits, substantial and broad. In fact, omega-3 fatty acids are probably the most well-studied supplement for people and for pets. We have about 30 to 40,000 studies in people for various indications, including safety studies, and about 900 studies of their use in pets. If you want to know more about science-backed top supplements for pets, then pick up a free copy of that quick start guide, link below. Ensuring good levels of DHA isn't the only thing that we can do to ensure that our puppies and kittens are growing the biggest, smartest brains and eyes that they can. Environmental enrichment, super important as well. So that means getting them out, doing lots of things, different situations, lots of different toys, problem solving, games, food puzzles. In fact, you can get the whole family involved in thinking up creative ways to challenge your pet's brains. Problem solving training is very valuable as well. So nose work for dogs, trying to get them to figure out where the treat is under different colored or different shaped containers. Clicker training for pets is a really good training tool for increasing brains and gradually shaping that behavior. So rewarding behavior with a click that's close to what you want and letting the pets kind of think their way through what it is that you want, what it is that you're rewarding. This type of problem solving as a puppy and a kitten can really increase that brain power. Exercise is great for everybody, for smarts and brains. So get out there playing and walking with your pets.